For example, we are trying to develop a plastic tile with sand plastic tile, that it is unbreakable, it can be shifted from one roof to another. So this is a project we are working on. It's our initiative as Kazire Group of trying to reduce waste from the environment. Brothers and sisters, Taso Butonde for a better Uganda.
This message is brought to you by National Environment Management Authority, Kampala Capital City Authority, Vivo Energy, Airco, Pepsi, Stanbic Bank and NBS TV.
Eno ye Salam TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dear viewer of Salam TV, we welcome you to today's episode of the Alhidaayah show that comes to you from 3 to 4 o'clock. My name is Muhammad Sekarala, I'm your host for the show. Today is the second day of June 2025. And as well corresponding to the 6th day of Dhul Hijjah 1446. So to those who are watching us from different parts of the world, those who are beyond borders, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues blessing you and accepts your endeavors. To those of us who are still here, we remind you that these 10 days are very, very special for you as a Muslim to increase on the amount of good you can do. So those who are fasting, we pray that Allah accepts your fasting. Those who are not in a position to fast, and you're doing other ibadats, reading the Quran, making sadaqat, may Allah also accept from you. And those who are gearing up for the slaughter activity, we pray that Allah also enables you to accomplish the same. So every Monday we look at Islam and science, look at scientific aspects that as Muslims should help us appreciate Allah better and know that the different scientific concepts that we discuss are supposed to just to prove that Allah has supernatural abilities to do things. If we appreciate him, then it means you can worship him in a better way. So today we want to continue with the episode on miracles of the human body, which is drawn from the verse that Allah tells us in Surah Al-Dhariyat, and amongst your own souls. Can't you look at yourselves and reflect and contemplate? So we started with the human brain, which we saw the hardware and the software, as explained to us by our guest. Last week we looked at the ear as another part of our human bodies, and then today, inshallah, I want to look at the nose as another very important aspect of us, the human beings. So to help us understand and try to break down some of these scientific aspects, we are always joined by our brother, Mr. Hamza Sekalima, whom I'm going to request to say salam to you, then we proceed.
Now, my dear viewers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us life and for enabling us to perform this act of tadabbur, essentially contemplating about the signs that he has put into the world, and particularly the signs within our bodies, because he has instructed us when he says wa ala anfusikum afala tubsirun. So he wants you to look at yourself so that you appreciate that indeed even within me is a miracle that is beyond my capacity. So I should worship the one that gave me this miracle.
MashaAllah, thank you very much. So viewer, we are joined by Mr. Hamza Sekalima, and he has given us the welcome remarks. So today the nose, I think, is part of the broader discipline of medicine or specialization of medicine, that is the ENT as it's called. So last time we looked at the ear, today we'll look at the nose. So first things first, when we talk about the nose, what are those interesting facts that a Muslim out there should look out for?
No. So the nose is primarily the organ that is designed for smelling.
Yes, that was our baby class curriculum.
So smelling is a very critical feature within the human system.
Yes.
Because smells can indicate sources of happiness, sources of danger, and other things.
Okay.
So it's therefore not very easy for a human being to live their lives without being able to smell. They would very easily endanger themselves, and that would be a very big problem. So in order for us to smell, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a very interesting set of features within our noses. So the first one is our ability to smell. Just imagine, it is indicated here that a human being can differentiate 1 trillion plus distinct smells. And all of this is done by simply combining messages from some 400 receptors, around 400. So within your nose, there are detectors of smell. So each of those detectors does its work. They combine together into one bundle and submit to the brain as usual. Remember, we agreed that these features that Allah has put on us, the ears, the etc., they are essentially data collectors. So they don't do the final. So for you to realize that this is now a smell of rice, this is the smell of a bad odor, it is an interpretation that comes from the brain. So the schematic is there. They show you the various elements of our smelling system. You have the frontal sinus and all the others. We usually don't go a lot into that Latin technical terms because we want our viewer to appreciate the cores. At the medicals, they do a lot of that analysis. So the nose is also connected to other smaller organs in there that allow us to smell. So imagine we are able to distinctly identify 1 trillion plus. That's a very large number of smells. That's why you can differentiate between very many kinds of smells. And indeed, if you look at our normal lives, I highly doubt that you need to even differentiate more than 100 smells. Because of food, how many food types do we really need to differentiate?
So many.
So it is a very interesting feature. Up to 1 trillion plus smells we can be able to distinguish just by using our ability to combine odors from multiple receptors, and we are able to come up. And indeed here it is indicated that the human capacity to smell is better than a very big number of mammals, but of course we are not as good as some others.
Yes.
You know very well the dogs, those ones have a very high sense of smell. A person commits a crime today, they even walk across a large area, sometimes going even through the bush. They go back to their home. In the morning, a police dog comes. The police dog simply smells around in the house and identifies all the scents that are there. Then it begins to follow the one that comes out of the house. Because remember that the police dog does not really know which scent in particular is actually responsible for this activity, but it simply moves out and starts to sense one of the ones that it has picked, and it will be able to follow. We are not at that level, but we are still better than very many others. But like we indicated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us these senses, and He may degrade them for a purpose. Because for you to survive as a human being, you don't need to be smelling food. Because some of these canines and all the other animals that you see, they are essentially primary capacity to survive is through hunting. And in order to hunt, you should be able to detect all these animals that are around you, and you identify which one is worthy. So you need a very advanced capacity to smell. But for human beings, we don't really need such a high level of smell, but we still need to differentiate, because we live our lives essentially driven by smell. Even within the Sharia, we know very well that perfume is one of those very highly encouraged things that we have to keep around ourselves. Smelling good is part of what we do as Muslims, so we should be able to essentially identify these smells. Food, illnesses, and so many other things. So that is one factor. It is a supercomputer of smells.
Smells, yes.
Then the other thing about our noses is that nose that you are seeing there produces what we call nitric acid. Nitric acid is a combination of nitrogen and oxygen, and in that case it allows us to increase our ability to utilize the oxygen. So it is therefore important that people should not be breathing too much through the mouth, because when we talk of the nose and these features are not available in the mouth. So you don't close your nose just because the mouth can also do breathing. There are other additional features that the nose has that are not available within the mouth, and that is one example of them. It generates that nitric acid, which increases your ability to take up oxygen. So you benefit out of a smaller amount of oxygen just because a catalyst, something that accelerates, has been added to the air that you are breathing. Then on top of that, these acids are usually important in killing these microbes, small organisms that are floating around within the air. So even if you may be living in an environment that has germs, you realize that you don't get sick all the time. So a mechanism already exists within your nose that kills a good number of these pathogens that cause disease. So that is a very important feature that allows us to live our lives and we don't get injured, just because Allah has put some simple killer system for these germs, and it allows you to breathe, but all the time filtering some of these negative things that are within your body. Then the other thing is air conditioning. You know very well that if you live in a hot environment, or be it in a car or in a building, you can manage the temperature. Outside it's very hot, but within where you are, the temperature has been managed to either lower or higher, whichever you may prefer. So our nose also does that part, enabling us to keep at a certain balanced temperature, even if the external temperature may actually be different. For example, for those people who live in places like the temperate lands, and it is not extremely cold areas, you don't think that their internal temperature is actually the same as what is outside. The outside is actually very cold, but the nose is able to filter the air and to manage the flow, ensuring that enough air is going in at a certain optimized rate, and also trapping some particles that exist within the air. So in so doing, it manages to keep your body at a certain temperature, just like the way you would have an air conditioning system. So it is very important, because our bodies, unlike the bodies of other creatures, you see creatures like crocodiles or snakes, etc., for them, they don't need a warm body. A crocodile can live around with a nearly totally cold body. That's why for them, they come out of the water and they just lie in the sun, in the sun, doing what we call sunbathing. It is one activity that they use to boost the temperature of the body. But for us, we cannot do such a thing, that you essentially have a lower temperature and go and sit in the sun. Your body needs a certain minimum temperature. And it should not also go too much high, because, like for example, today I was hearing on the news, the people that are in Makkah, the sun is intensively hot, to the level that they highly discourage even mere strolling around in the streets. The reason simply being that your body is able to survive up to a certain minimum temperature, but also up to a certain maximum. And the nose will do some control. So it's not that whenever you go into a small reduction in temperature, immediately the body goes down. No, you can keep moving around with different temperatures, but the body is largely stable just because you have this air conditioning system that is there within your nose. But if it is overwhelmed either by the temperature being too low or the temperature being too high, like in the case of the deserts, you find you are heavily injured by that. Actually, some of the people were collapsing just because of the overexposure to that. So in other words,
our viewers should appreciate that the work of the nose is regulating the air that enters the body, the whole body.
Exactly. So the air
that goes in. If you take it too hot, it might be a problem.
Exactly. So at least it manages
the air that you're taking in.
When the temperature goes too high, it fails to manage because it is beyond its range. But this normal small variations of hot, cold, as you move around, your body will still retain a certain minimum temperature. That's why you see that the thermometer will indicate a largely standard temperature for your body, even though you are actually existing in an environment that keeps changing from warm to cold. So very important feature there. Otherwise we would be having a lot of problems. You maybe need to move around with the sweater, and at the same time you are cooling yourself manually. But there is already an air conditioning system that Allah has put.
Why in extreme cold conditions you find some people tie, especially at the nozzle area,
to avoid the air going in directly.
Very cold air.
So that is a very important functionality. Wow. Then another interesting functionality of our noses, and it is driven by smell, is that the part of memory, because usually when we look at memory, we tend to do more of visual memory. We think you remember people that you've seen, but our brains are also able to store memory in terms of smell. So therefore, you may live in a place as a child, for example, and you move away from that place and go to another area. And interestingly, if you find that smell of that area some years later, you'll be able to actually remember.
Wow.
So meaning you have not seen the place visually, maybe like in a photo, but you've simply sensed the smell. And that smell alone is able to trigger back a memory, and you are able to move forward. So this video is showing us some of the peculiarities of our noses, be it the nose of a child or the nose of a mature person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given it. Then the other thing is, apart from giving us ability to remember things based on just the smell, we also have emotional states.
Yes.
There are certain smells that cause us to either go into an agitated state or into a state of calmness. Here they gave us an example of the lavender smell. So just by being in an area that has that kind of smell, you will find that you are able to relax. So our emotions can also be driven by smell. So the nose will also, in that case, be participating in collecting data that the brain can use in order to have control over the emotional state. I think that is very interesting. Possibly perfumes tend to also calm people down. Otherwise, why would the Sharia encourage people to apply perfume? It must be having an element of causing happiness. And actually, if you look at the use of perfumes, you find it is more associated with the happiness. You'll not find a perfume in a prison or in some place where. So it is usually associated with events like weddings and things that are of a happy state. So all this is part of what the nose is doing for us, controlling our emotions also depending on the smell that we see around. Okay, then there's something interesting here. They are talking of as a genetic matchmaker. Now they are saying that we can be able to recognize the brain, or the human detection system can actually identify your relatives on the basis of smell. So they are showing here that part of what protects human beings from mating with close relatives is a system of filtering smells. Meaning, when close relatives like sisters or brothers and etc., there is some resemblance in your smell system or in your odor to the level that it deactivates what would be attraction for you. Because even if you have your relatives like sisters and etc., and possibly they are very attractive, or they even win pigeons, you don't really feel any sexual attraction to them.
Yes.
Yet they actually physically appear exactly the same way as your non-relatives. So it's not a logical, it's not only just a logical thing that you have been told that this is your sister, but that body odor itself has a control, and the nose does that for us. It detects body odor that is nearly similar to yours, possibly because of blood connection, and it deactivates what would be something that comes to your mind in case you look at a person that is appearing like that. So in that case, therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected us from falling into incest. Because you can see laws against incest are there. Indeed, there are some perverts that go off the rail and do incest, but it is not a very common thing. Yet you can see that people live with their relatives for years and years, and it's not a big problem. Part of it is that your attraction system is deactivated whenever you are living with these close relatives. The nose senses that similarity in body odor, and it prevents you from being unnecessarily aroused by these people. A very important feature there, because for human beings, unlike other animals, for us, our genetic system is degraded whenever we mate with people that are close. So each product that comes out of human interaction that is close is heavily degraded. So it's not like other animals where even if they are of the same blood system, they don't really get a lot of degradation. I think it also applies to some mammals like rabbits and etc. If you overbreed them, you'll find they even just begin to die. The genetic content is no longer strong enough to enable them to survive. So genetic matchmaker is also another very important thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled our noses to be able to do for us.
Yes, do you have any other interesting factor before we go?
So let's add one more before we exit, and that is something about brain boosting. I think you see some people that sell brain boosters. They make you pay money for brain boosting. Now your nasal cavity is also able to do some management of your cognitive ability, your ability to think and to do some work. They're saying the nasal breathing, meaning breathing through the nose, synchronizes brain waves, and that enhances one, visual spatial awareness. Visual spatial awareness is being aware of your environment based on what you are seeing. So by breathing through the nose itself is essentially interacts with the brain and manages this issue of brain waves. Now remember that we saw the brain, yes, it does processing, but it also does it by managing signals. So this nose therefore also helps in regulating the way these signals are moving around, and it helps to keep the brain in such a way that it has enhanced performance. Ability to recognize your environment is improved greatly, and they are saying this is critical for athletes. Remember that some athletics involve things like somersaulting, so all those things are enhanced just by breathing through the nose. And that's why you find that part of their training, they teach them how to breathe efficiently. So the breathing is also part of very important education, especially even in the martial arts. They teach them exactly how to breathe effectively, because it has a lot of control on the way your brain works. The other thing it controls is reaction times. Now reaction time is that time between when you receive a signal and when you do a response. there are people with very big reaction times, in that the person is not even able to move away from obvious danger until it impacts on them.
Yes.
But that time needs to be as small as possible, so that even if you see something that's just close to you, you are able to either dodge and do other things, and that reduction in reaction time is also one of the boosts that our noses do for us. So it's therefore very important, our dear viewer, that you breathe through your nose. Don't breathe through the mouth, because the mouth, you feel a bit less agitated, especially if you are in a place that does not have good odor. You tend to prefer working with the mouth for it to not detect any scent as you breathe, but there is a reason as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this nose, and there are so many of these purposes, as it were.
Thank you very much. So dear viewer, we are looking at Islam and science and trying to contemplate on the different miracles Allah has placed in us, human beings, the human body, and specifically we are looking at the nose today. So important things to note is that you have over 1 million. Okay, the nose can detect over 1 trillion different smells. So meaning the main functionality of the nose is smelling and then breathing. So it is something very, very, very special, and something that Allah has made as a miracle that we need to continuously thank Him for and appreciate. So inshallah, we are going to be taking a very short break, and when we return, we shall be continuing with other aspects of that nose, inshallah.
Eno ye Salam TV.
Wangula school fees wa mwaka mulamba. Kyoli nokola sasura fees zo mwana wongo kozesa mumu. Nyiga akamunyenye emu mukaga 5 kamunyenye munana noti akadala. Londa ko namba 2 school pay. Londa ko namba emu okusasura fees. Teka mwe namba y'omwana wo okwosasulira fees n'omuwendo gwa sente zoyagala okusasula bw'omaliriza teka mu pin code yo. Aha, awujja kuba oyingidde butereevu mu kalulu k'okuwangula fees za mwaka mulamba.
With so many entertaining shows on our kids channels, there's something exciting for all ages. No matter what GoTV package you're on, it's your ticket to the GoTV Fun Zone. Enjoy shows carefully curated for all ages, all in a safe and family-friendly environment. So stay with GoTV, your ticket to the GoTV Fun Zone at home and on the go with GoTV Stream. GoTV, love it.
Now, many of us would prefer to use the Kavera when going for shopping or buying whatever stuff you usually buy for home or for your children or for whatever. Now, I would like to advise you. I think it's much better to keep our environment safe by using paper bags or cloth bags. Those are much safer because when we use the Kavera, you throw it around, it could block our drainage, and you know in Kampala what happens when it rains. There's a lot of blockages, and usually that causes a lot of problems in terms of water all over the city. So that's Obutondi.
This message is brought to you by National Environment Management Authority, Kampala Capital City Authority, Vivo Energy, Airco, Pepsi, Stambik Bank, and NBS TV. Better steady, be better.
Amanya bampita waswa Ben. Kyenyiza okugamba ku bantu bebafera. Oyina ku masimu nga tobudde muntu pin code yo. Bamuga bamusindikidde emitwalo baja ali 9. Message nejja kusimya naye nga sente ku mobile money tezikola ki? Teziriiko. Kati ne bamugamba walo code gye bamugamba okunyiga nanyigamu. Kali sente we yanyigamu ku pin code ye bwati. Sente zali ku mobile money bazikola ki?
In partnership with Uganda Communications Commission and NBS.
Okulinyisa omutindo gwa Afro Mobile. Eno yengeri joyinza okuzza obujja omutindo gwa Afro Mobile yo. Funa app ya Afro Mobile okuva ku mukutu gwa Google Store oba App Store oba ku mutimbagano gwa www.afromobile.com. Londako forgotten password. Tekamu account yo eya Afro Mobile ozebujja pin code yo. Ojja kufuna obubaka ku email yo okuli ne code empya. Bw'oteekamu code eyo olwo pin yo empya ekkirizibwe. Afro Mobile emboozi za Africa eza namaddala.
Eno ye Salam TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dear viewer of Salam TV, you are doing a great job, something great to keep watching Salam TV. And this is your favorite show, the Alhidaayah show, that comes every Monday, 3 to 4 o'clock. In case you're just joining us, we're always here from 3 to 4 on every single Monday of the week. We look at Islam and science, trying to appreciate the different scientific aspects that help us understand Allah in a better way and worship Him with that conviction and perfection to the best of our capacities. So in the last few months, we started on miracles of the human body, drawing from the verse that Allah tells us in the Quran, Surah Al-Zariyat, that وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, and in your own selves you have signs that should help you understand Allah in a better sense. Don't you see that you need to reflect further? And through this show, we try to pick out the different aspects to see that we try to appreciate them and reflect further. So today, we're looking at the nose, and it is one of those parts, organs of your body that one, add beauty to you. If you have a deformed nose, I think no one would love to associate with you, or they would deal with you, but at a distance. And even our messenger Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he was talking about people who should be destroyed in the world, the description he made was use of the nose. One day he was ascending the pulpit and he said Amin, Amin 3 times, and they asked him, why did you say Amin? And he said something unusual happened. Angel Jibril came and made supplications, and I was responding Amin. So it means if you do not take your nose as something very important, something that is a wonderful creation of Allah, a miracle, for you to appreciate Allah better, then it is high time you began reflecting on the same. So before we went in for the break, we were looking at some of the interesting facts. Fact 1 is the nose is our primary smelling organ, and number 2, breathing. Our guest also shared with us some other important things like having nitric acid, air conditioning, memory storage, emotional stability, brain boosting, and genetic matchmaking. All those are some of the things the nose helps do. So I'm going to invite him to, inshallah, add a word or two, and then we shall look at some other aspect of the nose, which is to do with the nasal disorders. It is, I think, something that we will need to reflect upon. Most welcome.
Now, as we indicated, this nose is essentially a name that Allah has given you, and it can have anomalies.
No.
So among the anomalies, there is what is called allergic rhinitis. If I'm pronouncing the Latin very properly.
Okay.
Now, in this case, you can have allergy. Allergy is essentially itching and a negative response of the body after exposure to certain things. Now, this allergic rhinitis usually comes when you expose yourself to pollen. Pollen usually exists in flowers, and there is also what we call dust mites. There are certain small creatures that exist within the dust. Once they get into your nose, you begin to get this allergic rhinitis. So symptoms include sneezing because the passage is no longer clear. Then there is also itchy eyes. And you can see that the nose is now transferring effect again to the eyes. Then there is also a clear nasal discharge. The nose also has its defense system to rule that mucus that you see. It is very important in keeping out germs. So in case you have exposure to pollen or dust mites, it can easily cause this irritation within your nose. So that is one anomaly that you will find, because principally we expect the nose to be dry and allowing us to breathe in and out.
Yes.
But once you have these things that happening, then your breathing system is no longer as efficient as it was. In some cases it's even totally blocked and you can no longer breathe, so you resort to breathing via the mouth.
Yes.
The second one is sinusitis. Sinusitis is, I think, very commonly referred to as sinus here in our environment here in Uganda. Yes. The sinus is supposed to be part of the nasal system. It's not an illness, as it were. So, sinusitis can be acute and chronic. For many of the people, it tends to linger around whenever there is a
balance in the weather conditions.
You find it comes. Interestingly, that one is again classified as a form of sinusitis. So they are saying sinusitis is brought about by bacteria or viral infection. That is one thing which you should be able to realize. Then there is also what they call nasal polyps. We may not go a lot into medical language, but primarily we focus on an infection arising from either bacteria or a virus.
A virus, yes.
Tends to go into your nose and causes these abnormalities. So what does it result into? The face begins to hurt.
You feel a lot of sharp pain in the face, yes.
For some people, you end up with even a fever. The fever is a mechanism that the body uses to fight germs. So it increases the temperature so that the germs no longer fit into the temperature range. But of course, you as the human being, you feel uncomfortable, but in actual sense, the body is trying to...
Of course, there are a rush for paracetamol somewhere to...
The body is trying to put an uncomfortable environment for the germs. So that they die and they no longer affect you. So sinusitis is essentially...
So I normally see the drugs we buy for flu, they have some sinusitis and something. Is it part... Is the flu also one of the forms of that sinusitis, or it is another different?
Here they are talking of facial pain, which sometimes occurs when you have flu. Then there is a thick yellow mucus.
That is all.
Then a fever. So essentially these are some of the common symptoms you find, which arise when you have this.
Maybe before we go to the next condition, this sinus, I don't even say sinus as we know it, because the Latin thing is. There are some people who it is said they are born with sinus and they routinely have to manage it. To the extent there are some ladies even when they conceive, you find they have issues with so can we say sinus is sometimes a natural disorder, or something that is
the next one.
The next one
is what they call non-allergic rhinitis. So the first one was allergic rhinitis, the one that is driven by exposure to pollen or dust mites.
Yes.
And now there is what we call non-allergic
rhinitis.
Now this one is caused by weather changes. You know that those people that they claim that they were born with some anomalies, they tend to be affected by weather
yes.
changes. So that one is under
non-allergic, yes.
Then some are affected by irritants, things like smoke.
Yes.
Those kinds of people, once they're in an environment that has smoke, even breathing becomes a very big problem. Then they may also be affected by perfumes. And for these kinds of people, the congestion that comes into the nose and prevents them from breathing properly does not actually follow with the itching. Because remember, we saw that when you have this sinusitis, there's even pain, real pain. Then in other scenarios, you find even itching. For the case of the allergic one,
yes,
you find there's itching. But here, the weather changes, you feel the nose is clogged a bit, but you don't necessarily have itching or that effect that shows that there is some kind of irritant that is ongoing. So you find weather changes do affect these kinds of people. Then also perfume and smoke are also symptoms. So you have the nose congested, but you don't necessarily have an adverse effect like itching. And I think this is also showing you the mercy of Allah, because imagine if you had a scenario where people are getting irritated just merely by change of weather.
By change of weather,
the life would become very difficult. But usually the nose clogs and the person is not breathing very comfortably, but it does not, according to the information here, result into itching and other adverse effects. So therefore, you who is having your nose working properly, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just giving you a ni'mah that your nose system is working properly. Otherwise, all of these anomalies don't come out of a person necessarily committing a particular act. But there are things that come as part of sometimes natural configuration. There's another anomaly that they call nasal polyps. This one is a chronic inflammation. Now, in this case, it means you find a person all the time being disturbed within the nasal system, and they give us an example of asthma.
Asthma, yes.
So asthma is one thing where you find a person is even unable to breathe at all, and they even require some inhalers to help them clear the nasal system. And here they're also talking of aspirin sensitivity. I think we no longer use aspirin a lot.
No, we no longer use it a lot.
That some people are very sensitive to. So the result of this nasal polyps, you find your nose actually gets nearly blocked, and you are not able to breathe using the nose. So possibly in that case, the person has to open the mouth and breathe through that. Then it also affects your ability to smell. So you are no longer able to sense anything. Because remember that the other detectors have to be working fine. Otherwise, if there is an anomaly, then you are not able to collect enough data to feel that there is a smell.
The smell, yes.
And remember, we human beings are driven very much by smell. All the food we eat that seems to taste very well is essentially partially driven by
the smell.
Because just imagine if there is some very good pilau but the smell has gone off. You don't even feel that there is any sweetness in there. So that is another anomaly.
Yes.
That we find in the behavior of our nose.
Okay, so thank you very much for taking us through the anomalies. As we have, the clock is ticking towards the end. I want you to help us at this. Are there cases where somebody can poorly manage their nose and she completely causes damage? Because there's one of the famous personalities, though he passed on, it is said he tried to bleach, and then the part that was affected the most was the nose, and it started rotting, and he always wore a face mask. So are there cases where somebody's conduct behavior can yes, to get damaged, and reversing it to the normal state is a problem? Because you know, human beings normally will have, there's what is called, is it somebody wants to change their face a bit, and I don't know the term they use.
I think you hinted on it earlier on.
Yes.
That now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed something very interesting about our bodies.
Yes.
In that He gives you something that has a function now, like the nose. We have been seeing very critical function here, but He also makes it a design feature.
Design feature in the face. So somebody might feel that his nostrils are so big.
So you know very well that there are a few tribes around here that have very large noses.
Yes.
This side, and usually they are declared not to be good looking, just on the basis of having it very large. Then the others have smaller and sharper ones, and it qualifies them to be declared as beautiful.
Very beautiful.
In the eyes of the beholder, but ultimately there's consensus.
There's consensus.
That a bigger nose is much better than
yes, so.
But tampering around with this nose, because you see this nose here, it's not really like very tough or a bone, like the way you see the mouth. Our teeth are essentially bone, very tough structure, so they have a rigid shape. So as long as the teeth are there, that shape will remain the way it is. But now this nose of ours is more some nearly plastic structure.
Yes.
So if you begin tampering with it and trying to
actually they call it plastic surgery. Thank you for that. Yes.
So you are interfering with something whose shape is not defined by a very tough physical structure. So many times people end up with their noses actually getting distorted. You talked of one of the deceased music stars that in his early age, I think one of his biggest problems was the size of the nose. According to him, it was abnormally large, and he took an effort and reduced it. But possibly the surgery didn't work out fine, and he ended up all the time having the nose disrupted. I think sometimes it would even appear to be going off. Possibly the surgery was not done very well, but why go so far? Just on the basis of physical appearance. And you know very well that as long as you have a talent and people have appreciated the talent, the physical may not feature a lot. There are many not very attractive but talented people, and no one really cares about their appearance. So it is not something good. So distorting the nose and causing it to lose its original shape is not something that we encourage. And remember, for us as Muslims, we do look at our bodies as an amana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us these bodies as a trust. As a trust, so it's not like your body. But there are people who claim my body, my rules. There's no such thing as your body. It's not you that gave yourself that body. For us in Islam, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you that body more as a vehicle. That's why we die and we leave it here, but we continue to live beyond this body that rots and disappears. So it is something that we should care about and not just distort it merely looking for simple objectives like appearing good, because you may even change the nose and again another one says, for me I don't like that kind of nose. So human beings may not be necessarily appeased in an easy way. So part of what we may need to do in order to care for our noses, once in a while you do what we call saline rinses. Put some very small amount of salt and rinse the nose. We have seen that the nose has its natural defense by a nitrogen oxide, but there is no harm in you applying some of these additional care practices. Okay. The other thing that you need to do, don't live in extremely dry environments. The nose works with some humidity around, because that water within the air is very important in keeping the air that we put into our bodies usable. We need a certain humidity, and the encouraged ratio is between 40 to 60. There are countries where the humidity is very high, actually, especially countries that are near the oceans. And the very high humidity also causes the bodies to heat up. Because you see, what keeps our bodies at a certain temperature, possibly we shall look at the skin as another miracle within our bodies, is the exchange between the environment and your body. The body. Now when the humidity becomes too big, the body stops sweating. But remember that this sweating is what is helping in controlling the temperature. So once the sweating is prohibited by virtue of the fact that there is too much humidity around, now the entire heat remains within your body. So you will find the person feeling very hot just because there's too much humidity in the area. So you are encouraged to live or to maintain between 40 to 60% humidity. I don't know how it can be measured technically, but the nose will tell you if it is feeling uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, yes. Make some adjustments. Okay. The other interesting thing about blowing our noses, they are saying you need to blow the noses. You know there are two of them. There are two holes. They tell you to blow one at a time. And the reason, you don't want to build too much pressure in the ears and to also cause sinus damage. Remember, we said sinus is part of the nose
structure, yes.
So when you blow it badly, for example, many times here in Uganda we close
both, yes.
In that case, I think it even contradicts the very reason as to why you are blowing. Because if you are again blocking, then blowing, it does not make any sense. But they are saying close one side,
blow, and then turn.
Close the other side, blow, and you should be able to maintain a good balance, and you'll be able to avoid unnecessary damage. Lastly, to care very well for your nose, avoid putting things into your nose, especially picking with the hands, because you see these fingers here, they have their own very rough edges. And the nose is not necessarily optimized for that kind of interference where we scratch and do things. Because once you overdo that, you will end up with the nose bleeding. Because you will injure some parts of your nose. The fingers are not necessarily what we need to be seeing within the nose.
Wow.
Then remember that these fingers have a lot of germs. Actually, some of the places that have extremely large amounts of bacteria are usually those places where we touch a lot.
Yes.
The door handles, those rails that exist on the staircases, those are places that have extremely large numbers of bacteria. So it means even within your fingers, you are simply moving around a lot of bacteria. Now, putting your fingers directly in your nose is something that is not at all encouraged. Yes. Not to be part of what we do as common practice. Hydration, drink 2 liters of water daily.
Subhanallah. So caring for the nose also involves drinking water.
Hydration. Why do we need hydration? You need mucus to be a certain level of density. Not drinking, the mucus will begin to accumulate.
So that's why the doctors always say, you have flu, try a lot of fruits.
So meaning just by drinking that water, you are diluting the other mucus that is you are creating that flu effect. So hydration is something very important. Unfortunately, here in Uganda, hydration is still a problem. We only take water as some kind of punishment. And it's not good because the water has very many purposes.
So I think as we come to the close of the show, you talked of not pricking the nose, but there's a practice, our sisters, one of the things that show beauty is, aside from pricking the ears, they also prick the nose. So is it something the Sharia discourages, or it is part of their...
Okay, for them they put a smaller hole, so it's not like they are permanently interfering with the nose. They simply put a smaller hole.
So it has to be professional, that is.
Preferably it should be professional. But we are not encouraged to put holes on our bodies for purposes of beauty. So
somebody can design the ears, the nose.
Ears, there are many kinds of earrings that don't necessarily require you to put a hole. Some, interestingly, do it for protection from people that have evil intentions. The idea is, for example, when they are sacrificing people within the shrines and other, they don't want a person with the defects. So you come with missing a finger, or you have a hole in the nose, or in the ears.
Yes.
The Muganga would say. So some do it with that intention. But essentially, we say your body is asked from Allah. Please do not harm your nose in the name of appearing good. That metal you are putting within your skin, you don't really know how far it can go. And the manufacturers, for them, as long as you bought,
they don't care.
They don't really have a lot of interest in whether you live a good life or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear viewer, we can never exhaust beyond the time given to us. We have been looking at miracles of the human body, the human nose. Things for those who have not been with us from the beginning, things to take home is one, the nose is the primary organ for smelling and breathing. And smell, Allah has given us the ability to smell more than 1 trillion different smells because of having over 500 receptors in the nose. That is our design. And then breathing as a function of the nose helps us to ensure that we have we regulate so many things through that. As a parting shot is to remind you that we need to be grateful to Allah always, right? There's a word that we always use. Some of us have international stomachs where whatever they give you, you put in the stomach. But there are those, if you give them some special meal or something to eat, they would say, no, that one is not my, it will affect me. Even, have you thanked Allah for having an international nose, one that doesn't segregate? There are those who will smell something and then it disorganizes them completely. So be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number two, know that your nose is a trust from Allah. You're not expected to redesign it. My nose is so big, mine is so small, I want to increase on the size or reduce on the size. That is not for you. Allah is one that made for you that as your shape, and appreciate and focus on the important things. Worship Him and do your best. If you're a talented person, our guest has always told us that no one will mind about the nose you have, as long as you're a talented sports person, talented educator. Do your best and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe finally, we need to care for our nose as well. Ugandans, we are very bad and poor at taking water, drinking water. The recommended usually is some are saying 5 liters, and today at least we've said drink 2 liters at least a day, right? To help to regulate the mucous system in you. If you do not, then the issues of flu, issues of nasal blockage will come to you because of not hydrating yourself. So at least if there's something we can pick from today's show is they need to drink water to the best of our capacities. So one, thank you very much. If you missed out on the show, kindly visit the Salam YouTube page, type Alhidaayah, and then you'll be able to have a recap of the show. Otherwise, till next time, I want to wish you a fruitful week ahead and Eid Mubarak in advance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Eno, yes, Salam TV.